Hello, I'm Colin Green, and you are listening to Spike Pit. I hope the folks that are listening in are well. I can tell you that the roller coaster ride of a midlife career change continues, and I've reached a little bit of a landmark. It's the end of my first half term training to be a teacher, and well, it's been pretty amazing, to tell you the truth. I think the biggest surprises have been some of the little things that happen on a day-to-day basis that you're just not expecting, that leave you with a massive smile on your face. I'll give you one example. I know it's kind of quite cliched, this talk of how rewarding it is to be a teacher, but I just helped out one of the students with a simple email that they wanted to write, and they was a little bit confused about the wording, and afterwards they were so grateful. It's I couldn't believe it. If they thanked me 7 or 8 times, that wouldn't be an exaggeration. The face lit up and they went off with a bounce in their step. I can't tell you when, if ever I've had that effect on someone, I don't know. But it was really cool. Another thing that's really cool from my last episode, I've got a couple of call-ins, regular voices that you will know. Jason and Carl have called in. One, Jason answering this idea of Barney's idea of splitting the party, and I've got some things to say about that. And then Carl commenting on a Star Wars game, and I've got some more news about that. Oh, I almost forgot, I've got a job as well. So once I've finished my training in July, I'm going to be headed off to a mixed school in the centre of Luton. It's got a whole range of pupils, every colour and creed. It's super cosmopolitan. They specialise in engineering, business studies and PE, so pretty different. And it's a newly established school, only been open a few years, and I just got a really nice vibe from the place. Had to do a kind of super nerve-wracking interview, give a lesson that they observed to a group of year 8s. That went well, and then it was an hour-long series of questions and a bit of a chat. But obviously they liked me enough to offer me the position, and I'm super relieved. That's one thing I don't really have to worry about, a whole big job search come the summer. So, relieved about that. Anyway, let's get to those call-ins now.
Hey Colin, Jason here. Thank you for those kind words. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed Dex. My son and I both got to play with Darren in his game, and we're going to be testing higher level characters coming up here next week, so definitely looking forward to that. As far as Barney's idea for splitting the party or not splitting the party and the group roles, I think there's a lot to that. Carl Rodriguez over the Gemologist Presents uses group roles quite a bit in his games, and I think they're definitely valid. There are times you want to do that, and then of course times it's not appropriate. So to use a very crude sports analogy, for football or soccer, when you have defense like the zone defense or you're in the middle of the field, that's a group role, right? But when the shot's coming into the goalie, that's going to be an individual role. So there's definitely room for both. And as a GM, I love it when the players split the party.
Big thanks to Jason for calling in. And really, there's not a lot more I can add to the topic. I did have some thoughts, like still no closer to this idea of where the cliche of not splitting the party comes from. I wonder if it's even anything to do with D&D. not sure. I wonder if it might be could almost be I don't know, a saying from mountaineering or exploring or something like that. So I wonder if it actually is even a role-playing term. The other thing, talking as I have been about Star Wars, that's the game I'm currently playing using the 5e version of Star Wars rules. And we end up, because we're doing that investigative thing, we end up splitting the party quite a lot, and did in fact come unstuck in the session before last. Two of the group were... So let me give it some context. We've got a speeder bike race, and we've kind of modified, not a speeder bike, a cloud car. We've modified a cloud car with some upgrades, and one of the teams involved in an upcoming race is the Hutts. And we suspected there may be, the night before the race, some skullduggery. So two of us decided to stay down with the cloud cars, and the other two members of our group went back to our regular accommodation. It could have gone either way. I mean, there could have been sabotage of the cloud cars. There could have been sort of sabotage of our pilot. So we left our big chunky character with the pilot back at the quarters where they could, get proper rest and recuperation. And my character and DM Ricky's character, we went and guarded the hangar, and sure enough, upturned a couple of ne'er-do-wells who decided it would be a great idea to sabotage the cloud car that we'd just modified and got all ready for the race. We managed to overpower them. One of them met a bit of a sticky end, and we won't say too much more about that. But the other one, we are, for their own safety, shall we say, keeping them in custody. Bargaining chip might be a little harsh, but let's call it a potential hostage situation. We're going into this heist. We thought it might be useful to have a hostage, especially if we end up tangling with the Hutt faction. It might be a little bit ill-advised, but we didn't really know what else to do under the circumstances. Couldn't really go to the authorities at this point. Well, we maybe could have, but where would the fun be in that? So that's where we're at. And yeah, like I say, it's been quite a lot of investigation and planning. We've had like the odd encounter, but it's the last session that we did was actually the cloud car race. So all this happened before the race. Then we Arfed he'd looked at a race that was included in the scenario by Fantasy Flight and adapted it. He felt he would turn it into a bit of a mini game. So last time we had a mini game of Sabak with our friend Lando, and then we had this cloud car race last session. And considering this was just something that Arfed threw together, he hadn't really play tested it. He just had to sort of use his intuition for what would work. We ended up with quite a tense race. It was 2 laps of a fairly long course. You had weapons on the ships, and you were kind of like shooting at each other and racing, and you wouldn't want to sort of like think about all this too hard. But what are we there for? We're there to have fun, and there was kind of tension. We played different races. It was in some ways similar to the dinosaur racing that I did in Chult in Port Nyanzaru, but a little bit different. And it really came down to, I think, it was the last one or two rolls of the race decided it. Everybody at that point had got severely damaged and beaten up cloud cars, and it looked like the Cloud City local team that had been trailing throughout the whole race. We thought they were out of it. By the end, because they'd avoided most of the damage from the kind of call it combat, the ongoing altercation that is cloud car racing, they had avoided all that and came from the back of the field and looked like they were with a chance of snatching victory right at the end. But we held out and netted ourselves 30,000 shiny Imperial credits. And talking of Star Wars, let's hear what Carl Rodriguez has got to say.
Hey, Colin, it's called the Jewel of Yavin. It was really fun. I really enjoyed running it. I ran it for my crew and using the Edge of the Empire rules, and they really enjoyed it. They really got... they loved it because they could interact with some iconic characters. I'm trying not to spoil it because I don't know how far you are in it. But afterwards, they really wanted to stay and retire based in Yavin. So I had one last adventure, which I was going to set, during the movie The Empire Strikes Back. But we haven't quite gotten to it yet. People just, drift apart and everything. But we always talk about it because that would be really cool to do that one last, get the gang back together, get the band back together, and do that one last adventure. And then they were going to create their own syndicate if they survived, and we'll start anew with fresh characters that work for the syndicate.
Come on now. Was anybody actually surprised that it was the GMologist, Carl Rodriguez, who came up with the name of, or remembered the Jewel of Yavin? Sounds like he's run it. Also, not a surprise, there is a man who runs and plays in many a game. We've perhaps got 1, maybe 2 sessions, 3 to 4 hours left to play, and then we'll be moving on to some other things. Perhaps a little bit of board gaming, maybe play some Dragon Rampant or Lord of the Rings miniatures games, and then we're into the Curse of Strahd, and pretty stoked for that one. GM Ricky's going to be running. I've got an idea for a character. My youngest son, he's particularly excited to be playing an ogre, a character that we used in... Well, he was like an NPC who converted to worshipping the Triad from Faerun. So that will be quite interesting. DM Ricky populated a little place called Turks Hamlet, sort of southwest of Phandalin, I believe, quite near Leylon, in a kind of a wooded area. And we're going to pick up where we left off with that campaign. And it's no big secret. Somehow we're going to stumble into the mists and end up in Ravenloft. Looking forward to that, as I say. At the minute, I'm just taking a little bit of a break from home. We've travelled over to Shrewsbury on the borders of Wales, a hotly contested area. And funnily enough, it's the scene of, or kind of the scene of a book I'm reading set in 1070. Funnily enough, the sort of thing that Mr. Rodriguez would probably be interested in reading. Splintered Kingdom. It's part 2 of a tale about a Norman knight, and he's kind of currently holed up in the early medieval or Dark Ages version of Shrewsbury. Incidentally, the home of the famous Charles Darwin. I didn't know that before I got here. And there's a big statue of him. I believe it's at the churchyard or in the square, can't remember, but I'm headed out to explore the town shortly. And yeah, believe there's 660 listed buildings in what is quite a small town. largely unspoilt. It didn't suffer bombing in the Blitz, so consequently it has remained largely unspoilt, not ravaged by 1960s and 1970s town planners, and it is a very lovely riverside location. Now folks, just before I go, I've got to say, I've been round Shrewsbury now, and oh my goodness, what an atmosphere there is to this town. It is absolutely dripping with history and timber framed buildings. If you've not had a chance to visit and you live anywhere near, I would heartily recommend it for the sort of architecture or history buff. It's just a chill place to go. It was a beautiful autumnal day. I think that added to its charm. Percy Frower, for anybody that remembers him, he lived there as a park keeper in an area called the Quarry there, the Shropshire Horticultural Society kind of mecca, it would seem. And yeah, what more can I say? I mean, I'm not the only person that thinks there's a great atmosphere there. It features in the 1984 version of A Christmas Carol, and I imagine this place at Christmas time with some snow and some church bells and Christmas carols, you would be instantly transported to a kind of a time gone by. Amazing stuff. And I should correct myself on that book. It's actually The Splintered Kingdom by James Aitchison, and it is indeed set in Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury. It's a contentious naming convention there, and if you look it up, there are both versions on Google. So I'm still none the wiser. And that, as they say, is a wrap. Big thanks goes out to you, the listener, for taking a bit of time out of your day to listen to Old Spike Pit. Take care, and I'll catch you later.